No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken Live episode number 145. Remember to click and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell if you want to be alerted to all of our new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and royal episodes too. Breaking right now. Starmer did know about the Southport Massacre murderer Axel Rudakubana being a terrorist. Starmer did know he was flagrantly withholding the truth while doing all he could to stamp out all unrest by sending ordinary Brits to prison for posts on X and Facebook. And his justification today is inexcusable. So how many of you feel like Ben Shapiro?
Do you have a message for Keir Starmer? Resign.
He should, but he won't. Because this man Starmer is shameless. In my digest next, I expose the anatomy of Starmer's Southport cover-up. Then, in the uncancelled interview, I'm joined live by Reform UK Deputy Leader Richard Tice. Also coming up on the show, Apprentice winner Joseph Valente has come out of the closet, politically speaking, backing Nigel Farage to become PM. We'll hear from him about why. And the MSM shames itself with fake news claiming Elon Musk gave a Nazi salute in front of the entire world. When will they learn? I'll show you these shocking videos. Then in the uncancelled aftershow, has Prince Harry just bottled facing me in court? Yes, there's been explosive developments on the first day of his trial versus the publishers of The Sun, and Angela Levin will be here with me for all of that breaking news. Remember, the Uncancelled Aftershow now broadcast exclusively daily and on demand on Substack. You can sign up. There's the opening page. Enter your email address in that little box. Hit subscribe. If you can afford a monthly paid membership, you get access to the after show, my exclusive reporting and columns, our live chats in the Substack app, and the chance to join a thriving community. But trust me, you can do that either way. It is totally free. The most important thing is that you join a safe space free of censorship. But now, let's go. Did slippery Starmer flagrantly lie, mislead, and gaslight the British public just weeks after being elected in a desperate bid to hide the truth that the Southport Massacre murderer Axel Rudakubana was a terrorist known to the British state? Without any doubt, yes, he did. The MSM might avoid this unpleasant truth, but I can't, and I won't. Indeed, I have a feeling most of you agree with Ben Shapiro's assessment that the only course of action left for a Prime Minister whose moral authority has been forever smashed is to...
Do you have a message for Keir Starmer? Resign.
But instead today, Starmer has used his soulless weasel words to try and convince us black is white and night is day. So now let me unpick the anatomy of the Southport cover-up. At an early morning press conference, Starmer finally admitted to relentlessly lying to his people. He claimed that he was legally expected to do so.
Throughout this case, to this point, we have only been focused on justice. If this trial had collapsed because I or anyone else had revealed crucial details while the police were investigating, while the case was being built, while we were awaiting a verdict, then the vile individual who committed these crimes would have walked away a free man. The prospect of justice destroyed for the victims and their families.
That is a total nonsense, of course. There was much Starmer could have said, and shame on him for constantly and consistently invoking grieving family members in his bid to try and cover up the truth. Then his attempt to justify why the entire establishment convinced us that Rudakubana was not a terrorist, although I never believed that for a single second, was because Starmer said there is now a new definition, a brand new definition of that type of criminal.
Is that this case is a sign. Britain now faces a new threat. Terrorism has changed. In the past, the predominant threat was highly organised groups with clear political intent, groups like Al-Qaeda. That threat, of course, remains. But now, alongside that, we also see acts of extreme violence perpetrated by loners, misfits, young men in their bedroom, accessing all manner of material online, desperate for notoriety, sometimes inspired by traditional terrorist groups, but fixated on that extreme violence, seemingly for its own sake.
Again, utter bull, Starmer. There have always been lone wolf terrorists. And to suggest that Rudakubana wasn't driven by an ideology when he had an Al-Qaeda manual at his house, and I have been told by multiple sources that he was a practicing Muslim, or is a practicing Muslim behind bars, when he was in Belmarsh at least attending prayer sessions, well, it is a joke. So when GB News tried to pin Starmer down, he turned to that irrelevant story that we have heard time and again, and I'm not for a single second undermining what the first responders went through, but rather than answer the question, Starmer instead uses their pain. Watch.
Chris from GB News.
Chris Hope, GB News. Prime Minister, given what we know now about the terror link and how it's kept from the public, do you now regret blaming the far right for all those protests last summer? Was it a far right issue, or were some people entitled to be concerned and upset, not the rioters, of course?
Responsibility for the violence lies with them that perpetrated it. I was in Southport the day after these terrible murders. I was acknowledging and thanking the frontline police officers and ambulance who had been at the scene. You can imagine what they had been through. They were back at work the next day. They were saying it was just their job. I could see in their eyes the impact it had had on them, what they had to deal with, what they had to see, how they endured that. As I arrived back in London, those same officers were putting their riot gear on and having bricks thrown at them. Those same officers. I don't think anybody can justify that, nor should they attempt to do so.
And he actually pretty much gave up, attempting to justify himself after the Sun exposed the insane nature of his responses. Watch.
Sorry to labour this point, but I think it's important. All summer we were repeatedly told that the Stockport attack was not terror-related, it wasn't being treated as terror-related. That wasn't true. Because in October, this monster was charged with a terror offence. Now, information was put into the public domain then that didn't collapse the trial. It didn't jeopardise justice. It was just months later. Now, you say you knew about the ricin and the Al-Qaeda bomb manual, and he was known to the authorities. Did you know about that personally at the same time the public, the press, and you and the police were saying this is not terror related? Because I think that's the nub of the issue, and that's what's upset people. You say you couldn't speak out publicly, that you couldn't do that, but didn't the public have a right to know, not least the neighbours who had ricin being produced on their street? Surely they had a right to know.
Well, I think there are two separate and important issues there, Harry. The first is on the question of terrorism and what constitutes terrorism.
And of course, he didn't answer. He didn't answer either of those important points. So that's it. I've had it with him. I've had it with his lies. No more of him today. However, I do want to bring you part of a thread on X by the Conservative MP Nick Timothy. He, of course, worked at senior levels of government in the past. And he made a mockery of Starmer's justification. So look at this. He said, I work for a Home Secretary and PM and know what happens when an act of terrorism occurs. The PM and Home Secretary are briefed in almost real time. Starmer was undoubtedly immediately told of the discoveries of ricin and a terrorist training manual in Rudakubana's home. Today he confirmed, and this is quoting Starmer, I knew the details as they were emerging. This is the usual practice. Then Nick Timothy goes on, but uniquely, as far as I can recall, he chose not to tell the public. One can only surmise he did not trust us with the truth due to the disorder that erupted after the murders. Starmer claims he could not have told us these details at the time because this would have jeopardized the trial of, and Rudakubana would have walked free. But this makes no sense. We were told the details when Rudakubana was charged. And quite obviously, that did not jeopardize the trial. There was nothing stopping the police or PM saying the murders were being treated as terror-related, nor saying a discovery of ricin had been made. And for good reason. Nigel Farage, who politically has led the charge about Starmer's cover-up, actually to great personal cost. You remember at the time, the entire mainstream media, Good Morning Britain, Susanna Reid, and virtually every woke wet politician went for him. So not surprisingly, Nigel Farage is furious. He released this statement following the press conference this morning, saying the Prime Minister is once again hiding behind the contempt of court argument. This is simply untrue. The country needed to know the truth about this murderer and that he was known to the authorities. Even MPs were banned from asking questions about this man's background. Cover-up Keir convinces no one. And in this video from Washington, D.C., he explained further why he is so angry. Watch.
So I asked the question, was he known to the authorities? No answer came from the police. No answer came from the Prime Minister. No answer came from the Home Secretary. And for daring to ask a question that the public deserved to know and should have known, and actually had they known, might have stopped much of the online speculation that led to rioting on the scale that we saw. No, nothing was forthcoming at all. I was even told I wasn't allowed to ask a question in the House of Commons about the identity of this man and whether he was known. Well, I was right all along. 3 times this young man was given to prevent. They clearly haven't acted correctly. It seems that other members of his family knew what his intentions were, and we have had one of the worst cover-ups I think I've ever seen in my lifetime. I was completely vilified for daring to ask these questions. This is 2-tier policing. This is 2-tier governmental approach to who lives in this country. It is an outrage, and I can tell you, actually, I'm angrier today than I've been at any point since those horrendous murders.
And on GB News, Nigel Farage actually went one step further, also fingering the Liverpool police of being part of a cover-up.
So what happened here was the Liverpool police covered up the truth. The Home Secretary covered up the truth. The Prime Minister covered up the truth. And we were told in the House of Commons we weren't even allowed to ask a question about this man's identity. Almost as if parliamentary privilege had been stripped away. Go on.
But just very briefly, weren't they trying to protect the legal process by doing that? They wanted to make sure they got to a point where they could then put all out for court to hear.
No. And this is the point that Lord Carlisle made. Knowing the truth about the identity of who has committed this is not the same as discussing the details of the accusations. Very, very different things. And in the past, we've always had this information. That vacuum led to those riots. And what happens? We get the Prime Minister, the Home Secretary, screaming at the far right, daring not to admit to the public that actually this is a terrorist, motivated, he's watching extreme jihadi videos, and we've been denied the truth. And now the truth comes out, and what happens? Now we're told we're going to have a public inquiry. So please don't say anything in case you prejudice the public inquiry. The Home Secretary, the Prime Minister, Liverpool Police are trying to run away from this, and it's just not good enough. This is the most appalling cover-up I think I've ever seen.
And Nigel has been really good on this, and I give him huge credit. But, you know, there's a big irony here, because none of his comments previously had been made on GB News, which has been part of an MSM cone of silence around the Rudakubana case. Rather than push their reporting, the MSM has simply decided not to mention the case on air at all in fear of a contempt of court ruling. Amid the Trump inauguration, there was a solitary report on the BBC News at 10 last night. But at least they tried to reflect some of the concern about Rudakubana, and they had actually conducted some original journalism. Watch.
Said pay the taxi, and swore at him, said pay the taxi, and then he just told me to, well, he didn't, he just said, what are you going to do about it?
A picture's starting to emerge of issues within Axel Rudakubana's past. Neighbours have told us that the police visited the family home here on several occasions in the couple of months leading up to the attack. A week before the stabbing, Rudakubana tried to return to his old school on the last day of term. It's thought to attack children as they left the building. He'd booked a taxi there, but that time his father ran out and stopped him. He'd been expelled from the school 5 years earlier, having taken a knife there, which he didn't use. Dylan Pemberton's daughter was a pupil there at the same time.
My daughter had witnessed him chasing a kid with a hockey stick outside a maths class through one of the corridors, and it is apparently well known to her and friends and to the school that he had killed.
Now, I think there's a real argument, and the BBC has top lawyers, remember, that part of that report could have run months ago. Now, Woke ITV was even worse on this. They buried their report 27 minutes into a 44-minute broadcast. That is disgraceful and inexcusable. But again, at least they did interview a neighbour who had tried to raise the alarm.
Wasn't the first sign that he was dangerous, according to neighbours who didn't want to be named.
I recognised the purple lanyard of being a Lancashire County Council lanyard, one that would coincide that a social worker would wear. We did see them outside the house, but they did not enter the house without a police escort. Axel just glared at you, didn't really make comment. If we knew he was at risk, why was there not an intervention put in place to prevent it?
The Home Secretary, Calamity Cooper, was also very much part of the Southport cover-up. Dishonest Yvette did her best to play catch-up in the House of Commons today.
Multiple different agencies were in contact with Rudakubana and knew about his history of violence. He was referred 3 times to Prevent between December 2019 and April 2021, when aged 13 and 14. Between October 2019 and May 2022, Lancashire Police responded to 5 calls from his home address about his behaviour. He was referred repeatedly to the multi-agency safeguarding hub. He had contact with Children's Social Care, the Early Help Service, Child and Adolescent Mental Health Services. He was convicted of a violent assault against another child at school and was referred to the Youth Offending Team. He was excluded from one school. He had long periods of absence from another. All those agencies had contact with him. Yet between them, they completely failed to identify the terrible danger that he posed. How did he fall through so many gaps?
I would argue this question, Calamity Cooper, is all coming 5 months too late. Just think of the potential lives that could have been put at risk in the meantime. And the level of willful blindness over Rudakubana, well, that is quite something. As the brilliant independent journalist Charlie Bentley-Astor revealed today, Axel Rudakubana was not only known to social services, but had been downgraded from Category 4 to Category 3 because of, quote, lack of resources, and the caseload was over 100 people waiting. Now, she explains Category 4 is the highest a young person can be categorised as, meaning they are vulnerable, dangerous, and interacting with multiple support services, including police and mental health. He was dropped down the priority list, and now 3 children are dead. And as I revealed yesterday, his classmates had long known something was wrong. Look at this post, which has since been scrubbed from the internet. Axel was expelled for carrying a knife. He was in my class and told us that we needed a genocide like they had in Rwanda to fix the problems. Police knew, and he was known to social services. The Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, he actually made a strong argument in the Commons today about why Labour had deliberately withheld information from the public.
So the independent reviewer is saying that the government and police can put some material into the public domain without prejudicing subsequent trials. And in fact, on October the 29th, Rudakubana was charged with possessing the ricin and the terror manual. That was then made public. So if it can be made public in October without risking prejudice of the murder trial, it follows that it could have been made public in August without prejudicing that same trial. Background facts on other cases over the years have been made public after arrest and before trial without prejudice. And the shields relating to 2 of those cases are in this chamber. So why did the Prime Minister not make public some of this background information in August when he knew it, when later disclosure of that information in October demonstrated such disclosure could be made without prejudice? And why did the Deputy Prime Minister on July the 31st dismiss as, and I quote, fake news, those saying there may be further facts to come out?
Fake news. Fake news, Angela Rayner. No, it was not fake news. And this is the problem. You may have changed your minds about why you wanted to hide the information from us. We're not stupid. We remember what you told us. I'm glad to see Kemi Badenoch, by the way, sitting there behind Chris Philp, because this issue matters. And there's too much outrage online to mention, of course. I did want to share some of the most thought-provoking posts, though. So Patrick O'Flynn, the independent journalist, he wrote, "Not even midwifery now. Blaming internet shopping. The idea that the way to stop murders of little girls is to try and stop 17-year-olds being able to get hold of a knife is just unbelievably dumb. What about jailing the guy after one of the many times he was caught carrying one?" And that's in regards to the fact that Yvette Cooper seemed to think that one of the biggest problems today happened to be Amazon selling knives. Look, if someone wants to get a knife, they will get a knife. That is not the point in this case. Sean Matthews of Reform UK wrote, "The Prime Minister stated today that the child killer monster Rudakubana was a terrorist, and he admitted withholding information about the case. It's clear to me that the PM was the one misinforming the public, and by his own standards, he should resign." And from Ant Middleton, rumoured London mayoral candidate for Reform UK, "The Southport unfolding and cover-up is such an irreversible failing of our children that I can only say that I'm so sorry and beyond disgusted that we as a nation allowed this to happen on home soil. I fought to defend the UK from such terrorist attacks, but all seems to have been in vain as we allow thousands in unchallenged and unmonitored. Irreversible repercussions should be implemented to those involved with this irreversible failing of our children. Our children should not pay with their lives over the complete incompetence of our government." And of course, this disgraceful confirmation of the Southport cover-up, which, by the way, go and check the records, I was calling a cover-up here on Outspoken immediately after the attack. But of course, all of it comes when the United Kingdom is the subject of fear and derision across the globe as Dr. Jordan Peterson made clear overnight at the inauguration of President Donald Trump. Watch.
About the state of morality in Britain, that grooming gangs were taking place for more than 3 decades.
No, that's what happens when a naive, demented, and self-righteous multiculturalism takes the upper hand, and when the upper class is willing to sacrifice the poor to their own moral presumptions. Yeah, it's appalling in every possible way. So, and it indicates, it's indicative of something truly hideous beneath the surface, not only on the rape gang side, but obviously on the side of the authorities that conspired to keep it a secret. Dreadful, pathological, inexcusable.
After the Southport cover-up, I have zero faith Starmer will clean up any of that mess. And as Lee Harris posted, looking at the image of Starmer robotically ignoring the devastated locals just hours after the massacre, he wrote, Starmer knew at this exact moment. Then he blamed everything on the far right. Shame on him. Now, the uncancelled interview. And Richard Tice, Reform UK's deputy leader, joins me now from Westminster. Richard, did Keir Starmer preside over one of the biggest cover-ups in British history?
Well, Dan, it looks that way. I mean, we don't know really anymore. We know that the Prime Minister's announced a public inquiry. Funny, isn't it, that when the Labour Party's not being challenged, he's quite happy to announce a public inquiry, but not when Labour councillors are involved in covering up a child rape gang scandal. But there we are. Look, I think the position of the Prime Minister is completely outrageous on this, and the British people want answers, frankly. This idea that we can't be given more information, it can't be announced that it's a terror-related incident. I mean, I've got at least 4 different incidents in recent years where a lone attacker has attacked and killed, and within 24 hours, it's been declared a terror incident, and we've had information about the alleged killer. And it just seems to me completely unacceptable in this situation that we were not told within 24 hours that this was a terror incident. It's quite clear that the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister knew about the Al-Qaeda training manual. They probably knew about the ricin within a matter of hours. They certainly would have known about the 3 referrals to prevent, and being in the sights of the police, courts, care workers. They'll have known all of that. And yet it was declared that this was a non-terror incident. The British people are not stupid.
And Richard, is your, I guess, accusation that they lied in order to buy themselves time, calm the situation down, and I guess scare ordinary Brits witless? Because now we're in a situation where there are folk languishing behind bars for having posted something on Facebook, something on X, that actually may have been true.
No, but actually, if they had given us more information, as recommended by their own government-appointed independent review of terrorism legislation, who says that in serious incidents and terrorism, the people should be given more information faster in order to prevent a misinformation gap or an information vacuum. Well, maybe, actually, if we'd been trusted to be given some more information, maybe there wouldn't have been any riots at all. And obviously, we'll never know. But I just come back to the point, you cannot sustain this suggestion that this was a non-terror incident. I think people felt that, frankly, we weren't being told the truth. Nigel Farage said there are questions to answer. He said he's not sure we're being told the truth. And it turns out he was quite right. And all of those who attacked him and smeared him and labelled him, frankly, they owe him a huge apology. And then we get told, well, we can't give any information out because it might prejudice a fair trial. Well, I've made an observation in the House of Commons to the Home Secretary today. I just said, there's a conflict here. The people want more information. The terrorism czar recommends more information. And yet the government is relying on, well, it might prejudice a fair trial. There's a conflict which, frankly, we've got to overcome. And funny how they then say they give information about the individual and the ricin and the Al-Qaeda training manual on the 29th of October. That then apparently wasn't going to prejudice a fair trial. So why weren't we given that information early doors? Why did they use the choir boy photo as opposed to the photo there?
Which could have been released.
Which could have been released. Frankly, someone who looks completely different to the choir boy. This is all just, it's deliberate, misleading information. And people don't like cover-ups. They don't like stuff being hidden away from the British people. And I think people are very, very angry.
But Richard, how could they ever have claimed that this was not a terror attack, using this idea that Axel Rudakubana wasn't driven by an ideology, when, yes, they knew about the ricin, yes, they knew about the Al-Qaeda manual, and I have now confirmed via multiple sources, Richard, that Rudakubana is a practicing Muslim behind bars and was actually attending prayer sessions at Belmarsh. So I'm going to go one step further. Not only was he driven by an ideology, it was very clear that that ideology was extreme Islam. Now, that's not to say, Richard, that he also wasn't looking into IRA attacks and mass school stabbings, but that isn't about ideology. The ideology, in my view, was clearly extreme Islam.
Yes, and, frankly, don't get confused by whether or not he was a Muslim. I think when you look at the terrorism legislation, this was a vicious, violent attack. He had an Al-Qaeda training manual. Therefore, clearly, it was political. It was extremist, and it should have been defined as terrorism immediately. And bluntly, you don't have to be a Muslim to download an Al-Qaeda training manual to tell you how you should go about some form of terrorist attack. It's political. It's as simple as that. And I think the CPS have got this badly wrong. I think the police have. The question is, did they do it because of political correctness, because they were worried about the fact that he was from an ethnic minority, or did they do it to cover up the utter failures of Prevent, of the police, of the courts, of the school, of the care workers? I mean, this guy was known to be just drifting around from time to time with violent intent, with knives. And they will have known that. And the whole thing is so inexplicable to all of us.
Well, it is, but this whole idea, Richard, that this is a new category of terrorists, that homegrown lone wolf terrorists didn't exist, is also a nonsense. And by the way, there's never been a problem from the authorities or from the Labour Party in terms of labelling so-called incel lone wolf terrorists as terrorists. So why is there a problem in this case? I think you're right to say it's about political correctness, and it probably is connected to his race.
So I'll just read you a few examples. 2016, the murder of the Joe Cox, the MP, by Thomas Mayer, declared a terrorist incident within 24 hours by a lone wolf attacker. 2017, the murder of Keith Palmer outside Westminster by Khalid Massoud, again, declared a terror incident within 24 hours. A lone attacker. August 18, a car attack outside Westminster. No one killed, 3 injured. Salih Khattar was arrested for an act of terror immediately. December 18, Mahdi Mohammed stabbed 3 people in Manchester Victoria Station. Within 24 hours, declared a terror incident. And if those lone attackers can carry out those attacks and be declared a terror incident, I don't believe they had any more information. In fact, they quite possibly had less. What I think has happened is that there is a slippery slope towards suppression of information. It's what I call the mushroom principle. where they keep you in the dark and they feed you on ... a rude word. And it's just not acceptable. We can't tolerate this. And the government and the parliament has to find a way to get to a much better place on this. Otherwise, confidence in the authorities is going to fall even further.
I listened to the question that you posed to Yvette Cooper in the House of Commons today. And actually, Richard, for once, I wasn't disappointed with her answer, because actually the government is right to look at this contempt of court regulation from 1981, isn't it? It is completely not fit for purpose. And it's wrong that, by the way, it's not just the politicians who've hidden behind this contempt of court. You know, I've also been looking very closely at the mainstream media, Richard. And there is reporting that the BBC, Woke ITV, Sly News could have done about this. But again, like the politicians, it was just like, we can't do it because of the contempt of court law. And I think, given social media, given how much has changed, there is going to have to be some sort of concession on that part, that we cannot live in this perfect world.
Yeah, and look, if we have to change it, we have to change it. I think what's happened is that basically people have changed their interpretive approach to the existing legislation. I'm quite sure that the government could, or the Attorney General could give some guidance to everybody to say, this is acceptable, this is not, this is how you deal with contempt of court. I think that'll be a much faster way. I worry that if you talk about legislation, we'll be 2 years down the track, and that will have impacts on various people. So, but look, at least there's an acceptance from the Home Secretary, and as you rightly say, she did try to answer my question, that we can't tolerate the existing position. It's just untenable from so many different levels. And frankly, with regard to the inquiry into Prevent and the lot, you know, it's a bit like the Home Office Immigration Department. It's so broken, you might as well just demolish it, make them all redundant and start again. Because
that surely does have to happen.
I think it does. I mean, it's just, you know, how many times have we been told, Dan, that Prevent's not working properly and it needs reform?
Big time. But Richard, isn't it also completely inexcusable that there has been a delay to have this discussion for 5 months? Now, I know Starmer said, well, we've been working behind closed doors on this review of Prevent, but that isn't good enough. You can't wait to change a system in order for justice to be done, because how many other terrorists are there at the moment who are being overlooked?
Well, the terrifying statistic in the Home Secretary's statement is that in the last year, there are 162 referrals to Prevent looking at school massacres. 162 in 1 year. So my colleague, the excellent Lee Anderson MP, stood up and asked the Home Secretary, well, how many of those have been detained? He didn't get a proper answer. He got a letter of flannel, which basically means the answer is zero.
Yep.
And that's pretty terrifying, frankly.
But Richard, can I just take a moment, though, to talk specifically about the threat of extreme Islam? Because I do feel like very often in these cases, especially with the Labour Party, they want to try and lump all potential terrorists into the same bucket. We do have to be clear. The biggest threat when it comes to terror in the UK is an Islam terror threat. That's proven.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And that has to be understood. I think the British people understand that loud and clear. But again, because of political correctness, because of weak leadership at all these different authorities, then they have to try and balance that out by looking at, you know, let's call them the far centrists, let's call them the far right. I mean, who knows what label we all get given these days. We all know what we're talking about. We are talking about extreme fundamental Islamists.
Yep.
And we've just got to call it out. You know, the Prime Minister talked about overcoming cultural sensitivities and all that. Look, I just think it just requires courage and bravery and an absence of BS, but we haven't got that anywhere near this leadership.
I know you've got to go and vote in one moment, but just a final question. At the end of my digest today, I put up this tweet or post on X from Sean Matthews, who was a candidate for reform at the last election. And he stated, the Prime Minister stated today that the child killer monster Rudakubana was a terrorist, and he admitted withholding information about the case. It's clear to me that the PM was the one misinforming the public, and by his own standards, he should resign. Ben Shapiro has overnight also called for the resignation of Keir Starmer. Do you do the same?
Actually, it's a really good question. I haven't formed a view on that. What I do know is that there have to be resignations at various places, and I think let's just see what happens with the sentencing on Thursday. There'll be more discussions in the House of Commons. Just holding counsel on that, just to work out absolutely where the real responsibility lies. But some terrible judgments were made, and there's got to be some resignation somewhere and some apologies everywhere else.
Richard Tice, the Deputy Leader of Reform UK, you get off and vote now. Thank you so much for being here on Outspoken.
Thank you very much.
And now it's time for today's Outsider. And this man, until recently, was most certainly an outsider to politics. You probably know Joseph Valente as the winner of Lord Alan Sugar's Apprentice and a business entrepreneur. However, he went public just a few weeks ago, announcing, "I joined the Reform Party. Don't hate on me because I believe our country deserves better leadership. Conservatives are finished. They will probably beg Nigel for a deal anyway when the time comes. Labour will destroy us and the people will be begging for an alternative." I never talked about politics until recently, but what sort of a man would I be if I stayed quiet when I know in a few years I'll be helping to save this country anyway? The UK wants reform, and entrepreneurs and business owners know they will be better off under Nigel's leadership. And I am delighted to welcome Joseph Valente to Outspoken now. And Joseph, I want to talk to you, of course, about your decision to join Reform UK. But can we start with this major news of the day that I was discussing there with the party's deputy leader, Richard Tice? Do you think Keir Starmer, do you agree with Nigel Farage that Keir Starmer has presided over one of the biggest cover-ups in British history when it comes to the Southport Massacre and Axel Rudakubana?
Yeah, I think so. And it's just another sign that Keir's not the right man for the job. He's a weak leader. I think the nation are losing trust in him across the board. And it's sad to see, you know, the victims' family having to listen and watch to what's going on and, you know, wanting justice, and then having the leader of the country just not really being seen to doing what needs to be done.
And I mean, he lied, didn't he? It was a point blank lie. And today he tells us, oh, well, no, I do think he's a terrorist. When at the time, Angela Rayner was saying that was fake news. How did you feel, Joseph? Because at this point you hadn't announced your intentions regarding Reform UK. How did you feel after the Southport Massacre, when we were being gaslit by our leaders, and then their solution seemed to be to lock up ordinary Brits for a post that they'd made on X or Facebook?
I mean, it's just horrendous for the family and everybody involved. And I think the nation, including myself, just feels let down. You know, there's that tagline for Starmer now of two-tier Keir, when on one hand, you've got serious criminals that are getting away with murder, and you've got people on the other side that are getting locked up for 7 years for inciting violence, for, you know, writing a social media post. So how do you respect the leadership if that's how they're approaching, you know, the things that are going on in the UK? You can't, can you? It's just frustration, anger, disappointment, and almost a sense of uselessness, because we can't seem to pick the right people to get the job done. And, you know, as you read out in my tweet, I've stayed away from politics. It's not something that I've needed to get involved in. But as a 35-year-old man that has a 3-year-old son and regards himself in what I do as a strong leader, I just can't sit back and let these guys run this country into the ground and continue to make terrible leadership calls.
That's interesting, actually. I pick up on one word from you there, needed. And that is fascinating, isn't it? There has been times in British history where people can maybe sit back, but this is different. Our country is being destroyed in front of our very eyes. The leadership is completely corrupt, which is why they were part of such a revolting cover-up when it comes to Southport. And you mentioned your son. I imagine you're thinking, goodness me, my son could have been in that dance class. It could have been me, one of those parents whose lives are forever shattered because, and let's just be very clear about this, Joseph, because of a failure of state.
Yeah.
Prevent was told time and again. The police were called time and again. Social services were in time and again. Everyone knew, right, that something was really wrong with Axel Rudakubana and nothing was done.
It just comes back to, you know, what's been happening across the country recently with all the stuff that has happened in Rotherham, and clearly the political party is afraid to call people out, and they're afraid of the race card. That's what's held so many things back. And it's probably another case of that happening here. But with how the UK has gone and the immigration policy that's been allowed to be rolled out, both legal and illegal immigration, we have a country full of a variety of cultures that are effectively now a law unto themselves. And so
Sharia law. Well, we know there are Sharia law courts up and down the UK, and that's not being dealt with when it comes to Islam.
And I just think they're afraid. You know, Donald Trump's come out and said, we're deporting everyone, the border's getting stopped. You know, our guys say we will tackle the boats. If they wanted to stop the boats, they'd stop the boats. The fact that they're going to continue to say that just shows how weak the leadership is. I saw a video on X yesterday, and you don't know how true this is or not, but I think within, you know, an hour of Trump taking up his new position, there was a border patrol across the border. They had it locked down. I mean, it's an easy job to get done if you wanted to get it done. If it was a Russian boat that was coming and dropping people off, they'd soon stop it. So why can't they stop, you know, rubber dinghy full of fighting age males from Africa? That's what I don't get.
And Trump kept using the word invasion. Yesterday, I have been using the word invasion when it comes to what's been going on to our country for 5 years. So is that all of this together? Is that what led you to reform and Nigel Farage? Because what's interesting, you're 34-5. Yes, you're a father, but you're still a young man. Yes, you're a successful businessman, but you're still a young man. And there's something about Reform UK and Nigel Farage that is in particular attracting patriotic young British men. So what was it that really was the thing that made you think, okay, I'm going to, as I said earlier, come out of the closet in a political sense and say, no, I don't give a damn what you think of me. I don't give a damn if I'm ostracized by my old friends in show business. I'm backing Nigel Farage to be Prime Minister.
Yeah, there's a couple of things, really. I've been watching over the last few years all of these boats arriving, and it's clear when you see the videos and the pictures that these are young men. And there's that terminology, fighting age male. There's no women, there's no children. Why would we be filling up hotels and apartment blocks across the UK with, you know, mini teams of these men. And I heard some conspiracy theories around what this was all about. But the more it's continued to happen, in every town and city across the UK, we now have mini barracks, effectively, these hotels full of fighting age males of, a particular nationality in the majority. And you just wonder what the plan is. Why are they all being sent across the UK, spread out? And I've kind of left it alone a little bit, haven't thought too much of it. And then recently, back in November, when Elon Musk, well, it's funny because Nigel Farage actually came last October 2023 to speak at an event I did in London. And he was talking about what was going to happen in the next general election, that he wanted to sock it to the Conservatives and that Reform was going to take their vote. And so Labour was going to win. And then his plan, after Labour had won, was to become the Prime Minister. Kind of, in a nutshell, that's what he was saying. And I liked it. He had a plan. He was strategic. I kind of got what he was about and his approach. And I just think generally he understands business and politics and, he's one of the smartest politicians I know. So kind of liked it from back then. Then in November, Elon Musk comes out backing Trump. And Trump appoints him as the head of the DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. And straight away, he's posting on X, I'm going to call out where the government spending is. I'm going to cut all the costs. I'm going to make the US solvent again because it's currently insolvent and it keeps going into debt. And I was like, this makes perfect sense. Why are entrepreneurs not in government? Why is it just left to politicians? Because entrepreneurs are natural born problem solvers. I go to work every day in my companies to solve problems. I'm an entrepreneur, and there's no bigger problems in the UK than the country's problems, right? So as an entrepreneur, that's quite an exciting challenge. How do we overcome all the issues that this country faces? So there's that. I see it as an inspiring challenge, and I can actually add value. I am frustrated with what's happening and hearing the same old problems and politicians not being able to get the job done. And I look at the state of the country and the mindset of the country, and, it's not going in the right direction. And if things don't change and people that can come out and walk the talk and put their money where their mouth is and actually get stuff done, then, this country is going to be in a terrible state. I think it's about, 10,000 millionaires have left the UK in the last 12 to 24 months. All the wealthy are disappearing. Everybody's jumping ship. If everybody jumps ship, there'll be no one left to take care of the country. And, I could jump ship and I could leave, but I have a family and I have my son here, so that he's got to grow up here for now. So I want to make sure that he's growing up in a country that's safe, that's abundant, that celebrates success. And that's a great country, and the UK is a phenomenal country, but it just needs the right people that can solve problems, that can get in and get the job done.
Big time, really agree with that. Ant Middleton, another reality TV star, has also come out in support of Reform UK. Strong suggestions he's going to be the party's candidate to take on Sadiq Khan in the London mayoralty. Would you put your money where your mouth is and run for Reform UK, presumably for Parliament?
No, I don't want to be a politician.
I actually like that answer. I like that answer because I'm the same. I'm the same. I have absolutely no desire to enter politics. I think I can make change from the media sphere. So I like that you've got into this without actually doing it for personal ambition.
Yeah, definitely don't want to be a politician. Don't want to be an MP, and I want to support the politicians to do their job. The right ones do a phenomenal job. And I think entrepreneurs in government to support and help influence to create solutions. But I don't want to be a politician. I think Ant will be a great appointment, true British hero. And he's a great guy. I've met him. He spoke at one of my events and he cares a lot about the country, a true patriot. So I'm sure he'll go in there and do a great job. And Sadiq Khan, I just think, has destroyed London. And I can't stand the guy, to be honest. So anybody is better than him.
Me too. He has literally destroyed the greatest city in the world. He really has. Well, look, I'm delighted that you've become outspoken about politics. interesting, Joseph, you mentioned Elon Musk. Now, the mainstream media immediately last night piled on Elon Musk, claiming that in front of the world he gave a Nazi salute. I want to show you that and get your verdict on it. I have very strong views too. So stand by, Joseph Valente. And if you haven't seen it, you can be the judge. But I promise you, the mainstream media are now lying. They're just point blank lying about Elon Musk and this so-called Nazi salute. So stand by. Much more on that in just 1 minute. But first, something really important to talk about, actually. Scammers and spammers who are out there to ruin your life. Now, I know if you're like me, you will have got more and more of those annoying spam emails, text messages, and robo phone calls. Not only are they time-consuming to deal with, they usually represent a gross invasion of your private information that can cause vast and financial damage. How the heck did they get your information in the first place, by the way? That's what I always used to think, but I've found out now it's likely as a result of data brokers who know everything about you, your health information, relationship status, mortgage details, and so much more. Then they sell it for a profit. These data brokers can directly or indirectly expose sensitive information to bad actors, putting you at risk of identity theft. And the number of data breaches worldwide rises every year. According to the annual data breach report by the Identity Theft Research Center, it went up by 72% in 2023. This means you and your loved ones are also at a constantly increasing risk of data breaches as a growing list of data brokers hold your personal information, which is then sold or published online without you even knowing about it. Let me tell you, the consequence of that can be shocking. Health insurance companies could actually raise your rates based on your online activity. Huge loans have been taken out under people's names without them even knowing about it. And this is terrifying. Scammers have even started using AI to mimic the voices of your friends and family members to trick you into sending them money. Now, these imposter scams rely entirely on the voice data they can find online. While you can ask these data brokers to delete your personal information, that process takes hundreds of hours to do manually and it requires repetition. But the good news is that today I have a solution for you, one that I use and personally endorse. Go to incogni.com/outspoken and get 60% off an annual plan. Incogni reaches out to data brokers on your behalf, requests your personal data removal, and handles any objections from their side. And the whole process is automated, ensuring that your data stays off the market by conducting repeated removals and taking your data down if it pops up again. This is what makes our yearly subscription especially advantageous. I do the annual plan, so they're constantly taking me off these lists. It is such a simple process. Simply create an account, grant Incogni the right to work for you, and they will contact the data brokers on your behalf to request your personal data removal. So go to incogni.com/outspoken and get 60% off an annual plan right now. It could be the most important decision you make. But now, back to the show. Breaking right now, Elon Musk has expressed outrage that the sick and twisted mainstream media have tried to paint a picture of him coming out as a Nazi on live television immediately following Donald Trump's inauguration. Now, I think this is complete rubbish, complete bull. But I want to show you how the MSM twisted what went on. This from PBS.
You know, there are elections that come and go. Some elections are, you know, important, some are not. But this one, this one really mattered. And I just want to say thank you for making it happen. Thank you. My heart goes out to you. It is thanks to you that the future of civilization is.
And look at what he's doing there. Patting his heart. My heart goes out to you. Come on. You must see what he was doing. But no, CNN decides to go massive on it.
Fully engaged gave again, just if anybody missed it, we'll just show it again. He's just wrapped up here. You can hear there. All right, so we just showed that. We just showed that.
Right. It's worth salute. It was quick. I think our viewers are smart and they can take a look at that, but it certainly was. It's not something that you typically see at American political rallies, put it that way.
No, it was not something that you usually would see. And it was quick, as you point out, it was very quick, but it was in a moment of intensity for him as he came out dancing, and then he did that. He is a hero here.
And the crooked and corrupt British mainstream media have continued the theme. James O'Brien, he's still around. Look at him on LBC this morning.
It's also illegal to give the Nazi salute in Germany and in Austria. So anybody minded to tell me that that's not what Elon Musk was doing must encourage him to go and do it in Germany and see what happens. And in fact, if you don't think it was a Nazi salute, why don't you do it at parents' night next time you're at your kid's school? Or just do it now if you're at work and see what happens. I think that's probably the best way to test it. Do it. Make sure you do it twice as well, and make sure you hit your chest first before you throw your arm in the air.
Oh, you facetious piece of work. And we can all see what you're trying to do. We're no longer suckered in by this stuff, which is great. But I just wanted to show you what Brendan O'Neill had to say about this, because Brendan O'Neill is one of the biggest supporters of Jewish folk and the state of Israel. And he sees absolutely no issue with what Elon Musk did, writing in The Spectator, no, Elon Musk didn't make a fascist salute. He wrote, in the longer clip of Musk's supposed fascist antics, you can hear him say, "My heart goes out to you," as he throws his right arm from his chest towards the crowd. Come on. This was just a goofy guy giving his heart to an adoring audience of Trumpists. As Batea Ungos Sagan said over at Newsweek, this wasn't a Nazi unmasking himself before the eyes of the world. It was a, quote, man with Asperger's exuberantly throwing his heart to the crowd. For what it's worth, Musk himself has responded to the attacks by saying that his opponents needed better dirty tricks and that the "everyone is Hitler" attack is so tired. And even the Anti-Defamation League, the NGO that fiercely fights anti-Semitism, is sceptical of the Musk as fascist nonsense. They say he made an awkward gesture in a moment of enthusiasm, not a Nazi salute. And they also said that America is entering a new era. So how about we give one another a bit of grace, perhaps even the benefit of the doubt? But as Brendan says, no, all that matters is that it makes them feel good. Barking Nazi at right-wingers allows sun-starved online leftists to fleetingly feel like warriors against fascism. They get to cosplay as modern-day international brigadiers without having to leave their bedrooms. It's not Musk who's the sado. It's this army of idle insulters. The left knows that history is leaving them behind, that the momentum is no longer with their racial huckterism, gender lunacy, and cancel culture, but rather with those millions of good working people who are sick of such eccentric ideologies and who are looking to the likes of Trump to crush them. Their wails of Nazi are best seen as the rage of the left behind, the dying howls of a political clique wholly rejected by all ordinary people. And I'm joined by Joseph Valente, the winner of The Apprentice, successful businessman, now part of Reform UK. Joseph, Elon Musk, he's obviously someone you really look to as a business guy. He's a quirky character, but there was no way that he was giving a Nazi salute, was there?
I think it was a PR stunt in true Elon Musk style. He knows how to capture the attention of the media. And I don't think it was a Nazi salute, but I think it was a very exaggerated movement. He's done exactly what he intended to do. Don't forget, this man says that he builds businesses with no marketing department. So everything he has done is about getting attention. And if you watch him on X every single day, his tweets now are just little mini bombs. Just post something out and he drops it. And he watches X just melt down. And in true Musk style, he's managed to, steal the show and get all of the attention, and he's doing exactly what he does best, and that's cause a kind of media frenzy. But was there any bad intention behind the movement? No. Was it a PR stunt, in my opinion? Absolutely.
So basically, he entrapped the mainstream media.
Exactly, because, you know, he's done it as an exaggerated movement. So if you capture the picture at the moment that his hand was in the air, he knows that they're going to use that against him, right? That's what happens. So he's not stupid. He hasn't done it by accident, but he's done it so it's subjective, and he can say that it wasn't that movement, but obviously it's a movement when you capture that picture at a point in time that does represent a Nazi salute. So, you know, he's done it to play both sides and have everybody fighting over was it, wasn't it, and it's done its job, in my opinion.
Can I just ask about Elon Musk when it comes to Reform UK? Given you follow him, given you really respect what he says, presumably it was disappointing for you when he withdrew his support for Nigel Farage as Reform UK leader, or do you agree with him that actually Reform UK needs a different leader?
That's a great point. I mean, I literally came out 48 hours before, said I'm backing Nigel, and a big part of that was because Elon backs Nigel, and he did a retweet of mine saying reform are the only way, and I was like, yes, this is great. You know, Nigel's got the support of Donald Trump, he's got the support of Elon, and then 48 hours later I saw that tweet, and I was a little bit disappointed, I'm not going to lie. I thought, oh no, he's lost the backing of Elon, but in reality, I think that Nigel's going to be able to, you know, build those bridges. And I don't think that Elon liked the fact that, you know, Nigel was making a point of the whole Tommy Robinson thing and trying to correct Elon on the real reason why he was had been put in prison. So I think that kind of rubbed Elon up the wrong way. And clearly he's a guy that doesn't mess around, and he came out backing Rupert. But in my opinion, you know, Nigel's 100% the right leader for reform. He is the guy that can get the job done. And I think if you really want to see change in the UK, that we need to get behind Nigel as the man for the job. You know, we've got Nigel, we've got Keir Starmer, and we've got Kemi. If those three people will be in the race in 4 years' time, then Nigel's got to be the guy, the go-to guy.
I'd be surprised if Kemi was still there, to be honest, by that point.
Yeah,
I mean, look, Starmer is so out of step with where the world is heading. We are so fed up with that woke leftist nonsense. And he is an embarrassment now, isn't he, Joseph? Because I actually just wanted to show you that this little montage to make the point that Starmer is no friend of Trump, no matter what he now tries to say. Watch this.
Of course, I wouldn't want Donald Trump round for dinner, but don't underestimate the danger to the world if Trump is re-elected this time around. I'm anti-Trump. I would like to send my warmest congratulations to President Trump on his inauguration as the 47th President of the United States.
I mean, Joseph, you have to laugh, but I mean, that's said through gritted teeth, isn't it? And that's such a terrible thing. The whole world is being swept away in an anti-woke wave, and here we are with that type of loser who actually isn't popular. No one really wants him. It was a vote against the Conservative Party. It wasn't a vote for Labour and Starmer.
It's painful to watch him, you know, backtrack and try and slime his way out of it in true political style.
Well, I call him Slippery Starmer for a reason, Joseph. That was as slippery as you get.
Yeah, horrendous. And like most of the Labour MPs, to be honest, they came out against Trump, and now they're all having to backtrack. But Trump is a guy, from what I've seen over the years, that doesn't forget. And he's one of the smartest guys out there. And so he's not going to, you know, be schmoozed by these guys. And we need to keep good relations with America. And, you know, Nigel's got great relationships with those guys. So I think that... you know, I think you were saying earlier, everybody's sick and tired. And I think that's what we saw in America. America just watched the country declined since Biden took over. The fact that they were parading an 84-year-old man that couldn't even walk up the steps, that had clear cognitive issues and challenges, and calling him the guy that was running the most powerful country on earth. I mean, how stupid do you think we actually are? What an insult to the nation's intelligence to think that guy could do anything. He couldn't run himself a bath. So, you know, it's been sad to watch America's decline, and everybody in America got fed up, and Trump won with a landslide victory. And I think that, unfortunately, I hate to say it, but we are going to watch the UK destroy itself over the next 4 years. I wish we could get Labour out sooner. They're going to kill the country. And it's just a case of how bad will this be when we get to take back over to fix it. And it's almost damage limitation now on stopping them doing, you know, the damage that they're going to do. Hopefully the positive news in America means that it's going to be a good influence. If Kamala had won, oh, God knows what the world would have been.
I shudder to think. I shudder to think. And you know, one of the reasons is because, of course, the mainstream media are so despondent given that their influence is now over. And I just wanted to show you, Joseph, Sly News, whose analysis of Trump's speech, because, by the way, I thought it was probably the best speech he's ever given. I'm talking about the actual inauguration address in the US Capitol yesterday. And Sly News just totally misrepresented it, but also, I think, misread the mood. Watch this.
There wasn't much in the way of unity that they could see in that speech. And I was struck by the tone of it, the stripping, effectively, of social protections, the stuff about gender, the rhetoric against foreigners. It felt to me like a sort of purer sense of American carnage, the total belief in the superiority of America and of Trumpian America.
They're just not over it, are they, Joseph? They're just not over it. They're crying into their tofu and their quinoa salads over at Sly News, and I'm there for it.
I mean, who's watching the mainstream media now anyway? You are the media now, Dan. Everybody's coming to watch your show. Everybody's going to X. No one turns on Sky News
And
anymore.
you're on YouTube too, aren't you, Joseph?
I'm on YouTube, yeah, I'm on YouTube. You know, no one's coming to watch those guys anymore, so they're just losing the audience.
No, but it is a new era. I am so glad that you have entered the political domain. It's really good to have you, and I really hope you come back on Outspoken soon.
Thanks, Dan.
Joseph Valente, former Apprentice winner. You know, The Apprentice is one of my favourite TV shows, and I shouldn't say that because I don't want to pay the BBC licence fee, but I do have a real soft spot for The Apprentice. Okay, the Uncancelled After Show. Angela Levin is up in just 1 minute. Big news today. Prince Harry may have just bottled facing me in court. There's been explosive developments on the first day of his trial versus the publishers of The Sun. Angela will be here with all of the breaking news imminently. And you know it is very important to me that we have a safe space, not patrolled by big tech, where censorship and control runs deep. So you can be with me watching the after show on Substack. www.outspoken.live is the address. Sign up. But it is most important, actually, that you just join the revolution, full stop, because it allows me to have a direct relationship with you. Just enter your email address. You can sign up completely for free. www.outspoken.live. Back tomorrow, 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Hit subscribe if you're watching right now on YouTube or Rumble. I promise to keep fighting for you. And I hope to see you on the after show with Angela Levin in just 1 moment.